Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Going to be getting back to work on the MR2 in this video. When we left off with this car, I had some parts on order because I had some issues to fix. I have since gotten the parts that I had ordered, so we can go get back to work on things here and resolve some of the issues following the 2GR swap. Also, a couple of updates that happened after I posted that video. One, you would have noticed the coolant temperature gauge read pretty high. Paul Woods reached out to me and advised that issue is with the sensor that was sent with the harness. I have one of the first patch harnesses that he had created for doing the Sienna harness into the MR2. And when he first started doing them, he thought it'd be a nice thing to send out a sensor with it. Unfortunately, the sensors that he had aren't accurate on the gauge side. They work fine on the computer side, but not on the gauge side. So what you need to do is use the AC Delco 3-pin sensor. That one seems to be pretty accurate and will fix the issue with the gauge. So I do have one of those and I'm going to go ahead and get that installed. Other thing I'm going to be working on in this video, he advised that he noticed I did not have the check valve in the hardline coming from the brake booster, and that is required or else you'll have some funky braking. I was going off the Mark videos, and it appears in his videos when he's running the vacuum line, he does not have that check valve anymore. So I do still have it. I'm going to go ahead and get that all bolted back in, and then I will splice into that accordingly, and that should resolve that problem. And then the other big thing on this one, this video, is I do have the fuel filter. I ordered a new fuel filter from Wix. I've had good luck with their filters in the past. But I'll go a little bit more in depth into that once I'm doing that actual part of this install. So that being said, I'm going to get to work. I'm going to start with the coolant temperature sensor. I'm going to try and use a suction gun to drain some of the coolant just out of the filler neck. That's where the sensor is. And that way I should not have to bleed the entire system once all is said and done. All right, so this is the part that you want to get. There's a bunch of different numbers on this box, but it's the Delco 3-pin sensor. So this is what you want to use. I did go ahead and use a suction gun, got out whatever I could, sticking it down in the fill tube. So I'll probably put like a little bowl or something like that underneath just to catch anything else that might come out. And then I'm gonna go ahead and get these sensors swapped. All right, easy enough. New sending unit is installed. And if you look in here, barely a drop of coolant lost. So I'm gonna go ahead and refill the water neck, the stuff I sucked out, and then this job will be done and it'll be on to the brake hose. All right, got everything topped off, and I did bleed this side again, so we're all set there. Now onto the brake check valve. This is the hard pipe that is in question. That end there is what would go onto the pipe coming off the firewall, and then it tucks and wraps in this little area here underneath. There's a bolt hole under here, there's a stud under here, and not sure where the last tab went to previously. I don't think it went to that hole down there. It may have. I can't remember how far down it was bent. So anyway, I'm gonna get this cleaned up and then see about getting it installed. I'll disconnect that hose, and yeah, that'll just have to wrap around the back or something like that and connect to this hard line. All right, and we've got the hard line reinstalled. Like I said, there's a stud with a nut where you see that bracket there. And then underneath here, you can see one tab which has a bolt that holds it into the bottom. The other one that was on here is actually the hole for it is the one that you can see right there behind that silver pipe. So you can't get to it anymore because of the clearance issues with the 2GR in here. It's just too tight. So I just removed that off the line, ran the vacuum back, or the vacuum hose back off the nipple behind the engine. One carefully placed zip tie to the wiring harness there, and it's in place. I mean, it's pretty solid. I mean, not solid, but I mean, it's not gonna wiggle loose or anything like that. So I think that's gonna be good enough, because I can't get it down low enough with the oil pipe that's there for the VVT system. It's just there's not enough clearance. So this is pretty much what you are gonna have to do in order to keep that hard line if you want to do it. I mean, you could probably just cut it anywhere along the line if you wanted to. I just figured it's there, it's already routed, might as well keep it. So that is what I did, and now I have the check valve back in place for the braking system per the recommendation of Paul Woods. All right, so next on the list is going to be addressing the fuel issues. So what I'm going to do, I already got the mass air sensor and intake pulled out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and remove the feed and return lines, and then get the regulator off of this old fuel filter. I can get it all mounted to the new fuel filter externally and then bolt it all in as one unit. So I'm going to get everything taken off. First thing I'll do is remove the gas cap to relieve any pressure in the fuel tank. Just try and avoid as much fuel spillage as possible, and then get everything taken out. All right, so I got the old filter out, which you can see right here. And then here is the new filter. And I kind of want to go over the reasons why I think you're better off going with the aftermarket versus the OEM anyway. When you do install this, you're going to have to clock it differently based on where your regulator ends up sitting on this side of the filter canister. Yeah, because it all depends on what your threads are and how you get it tightened and whatnot. But it doesn't always match up with where the factory one is supposed to be clocked. And if you look at the factory one where the fuel lines hook into it, it only gives you one option as far as where it's going to be clocked with the fuel line, and you don't want to put too much torque on it. Whereas this, you have multiple options where the line can go through. So this is your best bet if you have to reclock the fuel filter. So I'm going to go ahead, get things installed on the new filter, and I'm probably going to use some sealer on the adapter fitting as well as the crush washer, just to be safe and make sure that this thing is torqued really good. But yeah, that's the plan. I mean, I'm hoping, being that this doesn't have the teeth, like raised edges, that the factory canister has, on the sides, that I'll be able to get this thing to seat properly and won't have any issues with leaking. So I'm going to go ahead and get to work on getting the regulator and everything mounted to the new filter. One quick thing to add. Before you mount the regulator on that end, make sure you put the bracket on, because once you have the regulator on there, you're not going to be able to slide it through the bracket. I mean, you could probably open it up and bend it, but you don't want to do that. You're better off just sliding it on now, because, like I said, once the regulator's on this end with the crimp here, there's no way to get it on. So put the bracket on, slide it on loosely, and then go ahead and put the regulator on the end that it mounts to. All right, and as you can see, I did bend down all the teeth on the end that this thing is going to mount to. And then here is the adapter fitting. I used, one crush washer, which you can see in there, as well as putting a thin coat of this Permatex form a gasket sealant on the threads. This stuff it says it's, fuel and oil proof and whatnot, or resistant. So I've used this on many other fittings, works great. So that way it's just, extra insurance that this thing doesn't leak. So I'm going to let it sit overnight before I hook the fuel lines up to it. I don't want to risk while that sealant is wet having any solvent eat into it or anything. Once it hardens, it should be okay. So that's the plan. I'll let it dry overnight, and then I'll go ahead and get it installed in the car. All right, here we are next day. Let everything dry overnight. It's all tightened up and everything. So I'm going to go ahead, get this installed back in the car, get the lines mounted, and then we'll fire this thing up, see if we have any leaks. And real quick, here you can see it's in place, and what I was talking about as far as how this gives you multiple options for kind of retaining the hard line in place, so it's not getting kinked too badly or whatnot with the rotation. So as you can see there, it's got a pretty good easy curve to it. There's no kink or anything. Everything is tightened up as far as the bracket goes, and then this line, so I just need to go up top and tighten the return line and install the feed line, and we should be good to go. All right, lines are tightened up and mass air system and intake is reinstalled. So let's fire this up and see if that leak is resolved, and then we can also check and see if our coolant gauge is reading how we want it to read now. leaking. I was using my phone with the camera on and kind of trying to get a close-up up in that area. I actually am starting to think that now the leak is where the fitting screws into the regulator. There's an O-ring, and I'm wondering if the O-ring is just not doing its job anymore since it's been taken apart so many times. I'm thinking maybe I need to replace the O-ring on that fitting that seals the adapter to the regulator, because it's not either of the lines coming off the regulator, and I don't believe it's where the fitting screws into the fuel filter. I believe it is that O-ring at this point in time. So I think I am gonna have to pull this off one more time and replace that O-ring. So yeah, not real happy about that. All right, it's been running for a little while, so I do have some good news at least. Temperature, as you can see, is 172 degrees, and it looks like we have a gauge that reads right now. It's in the spot where it's supposed to be. So Delco sensor, the 3-pin, definitely fixed the issue. I now have an accurate gauge, so that is at least resolved, but we're back to the drawing board on having to fix the fuel leak. All right, so here we are, regulator back out again. That is the opening, that is the issue in question, and here is the O-ring that seems to be the issue in question. I mean, definitely feels like it's a little bit hardened. I don't know if it's just because it's been saturated in gas so many times from this thing leaking, or, you know, not sure what the issue is and why it's, you know, causing problems. But I'm going to see if I have something similar size in my little drawer of O-rings, possibly in a green. I tend to use those over the black. They seem to hold up a lot better for fuel lines and whatnot. Black tends to get hardened and not very user-friendly after a while. So let me see what I have, see if I have a match, and hopefully I can get this thing put back together. All right, so here are the ones I found. The black one is what I pulled out. The green one is what seems to be the closest. It's definitely a little bit bigger in thickness as far as the ring itself, but it sits just about perfectly in the hole in the bottom of the regulator. So I'm gonna put this on the fitting and see if it'll seat, and if this might work. You know, maybe that's part of the problem, is this is just a little too small. I don't know, you know, manufacturing tolerances, who knows what happens. So I'm gonna go ahead, see if I can get this O-ring to work and go from there. All right, everything is reinstalled and mounted back up. I would give you an attempt count to catch up, but I've lost track of how many times I've tried doing this already. So let's go ahead, try and start it again and see what happens fuel-wise. I will say that when I did use that O-ring, it definitely seemed a little bit tighter. It seemed to seat fine, so hopefully that is the fix. All right, start it up. Nothing pouring out from the bottom, so that's a plus. Alright, and so far it looks dry. I'm going to give it a few minutes and we'll see what happens. Well, as you can see, still leaking, still the same spot. It is, you know, where the two things meet, so that O-ring's not fitting or something, so back to the drawing board. All right, quick update, got everything out here, and yeah, this green O-ring that I tried was definitely not sealing. It actually, you can see it chewed it up and whatnot, so that was definitely the problem there. That being said, I think I lucked into a fix. Hopefully, we'll see. Went back to the box that the regulator came in, and there was this plug that came with the regulator, and on this plug was this brown O-ring, which brown's a pretty good one, is pretty good anti-fuel O-ring, and this fits perfectly. I just had the regulator on there loosely, it seated right into it, so I'm gonna go ahead and button this all back up again and see if this fixes the problem. All right, well, here we are again. Everything is buttoned back up. I've already tightened up as far as the lines go. mounted, installed. Let's see what happens this time. Fingers crossed that leak is finally fixed. Still warm from last time it ran, so I don't have to go through that this time. Oh, return line's leaking, so let me go tighten that down a little bit and see where we're at. Alright, well, car is turned off right now, as I'm sure you can tell. I tried tightening the line, it actually just made it worse, started leaking more, so I don't know if the fitting or the line is now damaged from being on and off so many times trying to fix the other leaks. But yeah, got a problem there now. And also it did appear that it was still leaking where the regulator screws onto the filter. So at this point in time, I'm kind of putting my arms up in the air, not sure what else to do. I'm gonna reach out to Alex, who makes the fuel system kit, see if he's got any ideas on what I can do to try and fix this or what the problem may be. So yeah, I think that's where I'm at. I think this video has gone on long enough. I'm probably gonna end it right here. I know this is kind of a bad spot to end it because I'm, still have a problem hanging over my head, but I've at least, resolved a few other issues as far as the brake line and the coolant temp gauge go, but still fighting with the fuel system. So that being said, if you want to see how this thing gets resolved, if it gets resolved, please like, please subscribe, please hit the notification bell. Hope you're learning something from my struggles. That's why I'm doing this. So yeah, that's gonna do it. Thank you for watching and have a great day.